Okay, it's Tuesday, January 11th at 6:30, and I'd like to call the public hearing for the city of Twinsburg to order. Shannon, call the roll.
Mr. Scafidi?
Here.
Mr. Fury?
Here.
Mr. Barr?
Here.
Mr. Post?
Here.
Mrs. Labby? Here. Mrs. Walker?
Present.
Mr. Bellin?
I'm here.
Give a heads up, yeah.
Okay, audience participation.
There is none.
There is none, okay. The agenda for the public hearing, Shannon, you want to read the ordinance?
Sure. An ordinance amending Chapter 1151 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Twinsburg, allowing medical marijuana dispensaries as a conditionally permitted use in the C2 and C3 zoning districts.
There's no public here. Anybody on council have anything to say, any discussion before we, Mayor?
Yeah, I just want to make a couple comments. I know we've been approached by a couple of parties that are looking to open up dispensaries in Ohio. They've opened up, I believe, 73 additional licenses. I know as of the end of the year, they've had about 1,400 different companies apply. A lot of them are multiple with multiple different companies because I believe it's kind of a lottery situation. I just still have concern. I know we can do what we can to regulate the medical marijuana side of things, but when you read like an article in Cranes back in November, a real estate official says it's not uncommon for some applicants to have submitted double or triple that in order to increase their odds for securing a license or few. After all, the marijuana industry could go fully recreational in the future, which could be a boom for companies situated to take advantage of the expanding market. So that is my concern, that we end up in, if we end up with a dispensary, we end up in this major legal battle trying to keep recreational out of the city, which I'm not supportive of. I know there may be different opinions on council. I just kind of wanted to share some of that because being around zoning all that I have, I know that if this switch gets flipped, we may or may not win a case if we get sued. And you're talking about organizations with plenty of deep pockets to be able to support some type of lawsuits like that. So that's going to be my opinion. It's probably an opinion that if anyone asks me in the public, I'll probably share that with them, that that's my biggest concern. I know a lot of municipalities are just banning them altogether, but the ones that are opening them are really getting concentrated applications for those particular licenses. I don't know.
An example of a lawsuit.
Well, I mean, we have zoning cases all the time. I mean, our zoning code could easily ban a particular use at a certain area, and we can get, and people can go through for variances, can go through for conditional uses, can go through for a lot of different things, and end up in litigation. In litigation, you can resolve any of that without applying an actual zoning code. So I guess that's my biggest concern is I don't know that it would be a slam dunk case if we just said where a zoning code only allows medical, you can't sell recreational there. Because at the end of the day,
anybody can sell recreational marijuana in Ohio now currently. It's my understanding that the state's going to have a referendum in a year and a half to vote on whether it was going to be legal or not.
yeah, no, it's not in,
I was going to say, I thought this was just a medical dispensary.
it absolutely is right now.
Okay.
My biggest concern is a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, all of a sudden it gets voted in as recreational and we have dispensaries here. Absolutely, they're going to want to sell recreationally. And I just have concerns about that.
I don't think that license or that process is defined. Again, it wouldn't be defined because it's not in I'm sure there's potential things. I agree with you that if we don't do something and somebody came in, a la the strip club 8 or 10 years ago, didn't have it anywhere or didn't have it specifically locked out, we spent $250,000 trying to get that place closed. So that's why I just put it on the ballot. It's good faith.
No, I think it's something for the residents to decide. I just wanted to share my opinion because it'll probably be out there.
Are there any nearby municipalities that have this marijuana already?
Yes.
This.
So there's medical dispensaries in Akron and other cities. There's none in Twinsburg. I don't know of any
Like Hudson?
Any of our, yeah, I mean, our adjacent, Hudson has them, I think, banned altogether.
Okay.
So you're not going to see medical or anything there. I think medical opens the door to recreational. If you have a dispensary established that sells marijuana,
I don't know that.
I think that's going to be the challenging part, so, as to ban it from them selling it. But again, I don't know of any municipalities that have dispensaries around here. So,
Is the advantage just tax revenue?
I mean, there's Athens, I looked it up, I know there are a bunch. Athens, I think Cleveland has one, but not
Get
anything
any
local.
sales tax, we only get
Yeah.
income tax.
That's it.
Garfield.
Garfield.
Yeah, Garfield, you got one in Beechwood.
Recreational
So,
sales.
We don't even have that, it doesn't
Akron.
say that in this thing, this is simply says medical.
Down the road.
Is medical marijuana
18 months.
taxable like everything else, the dispensary?
So it's the profit tax, the income profit tax, we could reap benefits on, but from a tax basis standpoint, I mean, they might have, what, 5 or 10 employees?
It's just employees.
It's just
Yeah.
employees, yeah. No, there's no way, because when the dispensaries were meeting with us in the beginning with the original licenses, we had a organization from Seattle come here wanting to open a dispensary here. They showed me a video of a place called the Green Haze out in Seattle, which recreation is legal, and I'm like, you understand that's the last thing I want to see in the city? And he kept going on about, well, the income. I'm like, first of all, let's clear the air. There is no income to the city. The difference is in Seattle, there's 10% of gross revenue goes to the local municipality. So there's a tax on the marijuana industry out there. So they do $5 million, there's $500,000 that come to the city, the local municipality from a tax. We can't tax. We don't have the ability to tax at the local level for stuff like that. So as soon as he realized that, he goes, oh, I get it. There's no incentive for you to even be talking to us. I'm like, yeah, you're right. So they left.
Is that a state law in Washington?
It's so in Washington, yeah, it's something that allows local municipalities, and every state has probably a little different tweaks on state, taxing authority, but it's a much different atmosphere out there.
Has there been any discussion at the state level of Ohio of enacting something similar if this referendum were to go through?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, there's nothing that I'm aware of.
It changes the decision process significantly if it does. That's
Yeah, it could. Yeah, I mean, it could change. Yeah, I mean, you could have certain municipalities that would be really attractive if they could, if it was a $5 million
Right.
dispensary and they could tax the gross, revenue of a dispensary, it probably would change the recruiting of those into a certain municipality. So that's all. That's all I want to share.
Are there any other negatives to this? I mean, I'm like, I just started a little bit ago, so I wasn't there when this was all in the initial talks. So I just want to, like, are there any other negatives or something that would look bad on the city if this goes through? I mean, what are the bullet point negatives and positives, I guess?
well, again, just to be clear, the only thing that we would be voting on in this legislation this evening is
If it
whether or
goes to
not
ballot.
to
Goes to
put it
the
to the
ballot.
ballot. Yes.
Correct, but if it then passes or fails at that point, what are the pros and cons of having it?
Pro would be that we have a permitted use in areas that
Be
won't
conditional
close
use.
to schools.
It'd be a conditional.
Yeah,
use.
just,
Conditional use.
Conditional use.
Or, I mean, we have control of where they go. So it'd be in industrial areas, not in residential.
Section
or-
C2,
yeah,
C3.
it allows, Mr. Post, it allows for regulation of it if we control it. The conversation at the Planning Commission, they went through a lot of things, but our fear was that if somebody came to Planning Commission and tried to argue that it was substantially similar to an already existing permitted use, okay, which, let's say you come and you make the argument, well, it's the same thing as a pharmacy or a drugstore. You allow CVS and Walgreens in. This isn't any, they sell everything in the pharmacy. This isn't any different. This is substantially similar. We have a provision in our code that if you make that argument, and if that argument is viable, then they can go anywhere that a drugstore is permitted. So what Planning Commission's feeling was that if we make them a conditionally permitted use, at least we get to control them on a case-by-case basis, applicant-by-applicant basis, and say yes or no, the state has its own regulations concerning distance to schools, to churches, things like that, that would apply no matter what, but then our planning commission gets to view it individually on a case-by-case basis. That was the
Trying to get
thought.
ahead of the game.
We didn't address it early on. I mean, you also have cultivation sites, which we aren't addressing because technically our code allows for cultivate greenhouses, things like that, which we would be hard pressed to argue that would not encompass medical or marijuana cultivation. So that's already permitted. That's why we're not addressing that. This is the one area that we felt was a little more gray, and we didn't want to get caught not regulating it. So that's why we're here tonight.
Dave, when I did do research on it, I read an article on whether crime went up. Of course, it was in LA, and it said, no, it did not go up in the area. So it was over a period of time. So that was one of the negatives I was thinking of, is crime level, what the police department thought of it.
Was that for medical or recreational?
For medical.
Okay.
I think it's one of those things you're not going to be able to stop eventually. So, you know, I mean, fast forward 20, 30 years, you know, and it probably is good to have a little bit of control, so.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, Ohio statute, I believe, lets us completely ban it from existence.
It does.
So, yeah, so I mean, another option is to, rather than zoning for it, is to also zone to ban it from appearing in Twinsburg, so. But
Okay, anybody else? Okay, then we will adjourn the public hearing.